Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Eric with my co-host Robert here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We have a guest on today, and I'm really excited about that. We're going to be talking about college week two, and reviewing week one as well as looking into NFL week one. So got a big episode today, and looking forward to it. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce fantasy football Travis M from Twitter, and if you'd like to introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody what you're about yourself. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Travis May is the name. And you can find me on Twitter at FF_TravisM. I've been doing some, different fantasy content for about 7 years or so. Start out at the Fantasy Authority, which does not really even exist now, but been around, covered a couple teams via some beat writing and a bunch of practice coverage and training camp coverage and things like that over the years. But now I kind of tried to consolidate things because I got tired of writing in like 4 or 5 places at a time. So now most of my stuff is at RotoViz for fantasy football purposes, and then I joined on with the Solid Verbal guys, Dan and Ty, who've been doing college football coverage since 2008. They relaunched their website and revamped it again, and I'm doing a bunch of stat work for them. So on the college football, real football side, just doing some stuff for them. But yeah, thanks for having me. Just always good to talk football right as things are about to kick off here.
Yeah, right. So it's finally college football time and NFL time. So best time of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just go ahead and jump in here with some news. So, I think probably the biggest news of the day was George Kittle's groin injury. That just recently came out and started, I think, yesterday, and he's unlikely to play, it looks like. So, if you have George Kittle in your lineup, probably need to look for a backup tight end if you didn't draft one already. You guys think it's a long-term injury, or are you worried about it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think anytime you're talking about like a groin injury, hamstring injury, it is kind of frustrating because you miss out on your player and there's no explosiveness even when he's back. And we have seen over the years. I'm not one of those football injury guys on Twitter or anything, but yeah. I have dug into that type of information, and hamstrings, groins, different types of pulls like that typically mean that you're going to miss some games early, and then you're probably more often than not going to see it happen and flare up again later in the year. So really frustrating if you invested early in Kittle.
Yeah, is there anybody that you are specifically targeting, Eric, to replace Kittle this week, or?
Yeah, I'd say on your league settings, but hopefully you could have grabbed we're talking redraft, obviously. Cole Kmet could be an option. I think Tyler maybe or another potentially good options, but this is what you get when you invest in George Kittle. Proven time and time again, year after year, he has missed 2-4 games at least. You need to have that backup tight end to fill in for him.
Yeah, and the last little injury piece that we saw is J.K. Dobbins is not expected to play, at least from Lamar's mouth. So I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out. We haven't heard anything with official injury reports though yet, so I think we're kind of waiting on Friday to really see what that looks like. But I don't expect J.K. to play. I don't know if either of you do, but.
No, I don't. And in any spot where I had him rostered, I definitely had a short-term backup plan put in place as is. I mean, anytime there's any kind of injury situation that is kind of a long-term play, like an ACL, like an Achilles, anything like that happens, and there's still questions as training camp kicks off. There's still questions as preseason kicks off. You have to have some kind of pivot option built in, whether it's a handcuff option on the same team, like even in Justice Hill, somebody that fits that kind of mold and archetype, or really just deciding, hey, look, I know I'm going to be down a running back. I'm going to have to really rely on more wide receiver play this year, and maybe just rely on even just kind of shooting for the stars with a boom bust, different flex option for you at wide receiver instead of just trying to plug in, some kind of backup running back, hoping that he gets enough work that would kind of emulate what J.K. Dobbins would give you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Eric, do you have anything else to kind of add on that before we jump into the topic for the week?
No, I mean, let's just keep on moving. I'm excited to talk about college football and our preview for the NFL.
Yeah. So starting off, let's talk about Florida and Utah. I think the big story there is Anthony Richardson. Eric and I, we got into a bit of argument about it during the game. But what do you guys think the ceiling is for Anthony Richardson? What do you think the current level of Anthony Richardson is as an NFL prospect? So we'll start with you, Travis.
Sure. So with Anthony Richardson, we've known for a long time he was kind of a big deal coming out of high school. There was even rumblings going into, I guess, his senior year that there was actually going to be camera crews following around him to be involved with the Netflix QB1 series. That ended up not coming to fruition. The series actually ended up getting canceled, but he had a lot of hype just because of the dual threat nature of his skill set. Even as a late high schooler, like he was a top end 4-star kind of guy, ran like a legit 4.5 in high school. And so we knew that this guy's a huge, big body guy with a rocket arm. He has all this potential, goes to Florida, fights for time, limited action last year, questionable results, against high level competition in the SEC, even against Georgia. And so we couldn't really confidently proclaim, hey, this guy is going to be the next big deal. But we all saw the potential. For those of you who follow recruiting, follow college football very closely, we knew that there was potential for him to be an early round draft pick. And in a recent piece I actually put together at RotoViz, my top 100 future fantasy football stars, I actually had him around pick 30 overall, even prior to the season beginning, in terms of like future rookies to come, like players are going to be drafted 2023, 2024, 2025, even including individual defensive players. Like I had a few of the defensive guys ahead of him, like Will Anderson for Alabama, Jalen Carter for Georgia, a few other guys. But I was pretty confident that he was going to prove himself this year, and he did exactly that. And I think you probably have to move him up even higher. And the expectation might be at this point that he looks like a first rounder already. And I know it's just one game, but we already knew and have known for multiple years that the potential was there. So it's just finally coming to really just reveal itself. And it's super exciting.
Yeah, I think he definitely has first round potential. But right now, I think he's right around like a second or third round pick, just because of the the athleticism. It's all there. Like he has all the tools necessary. But for me, it's just the decision making. He has to improve in the decision making and the accuracy before I feel like a team will invest super heavily. I feel like he's right around that like Jalen Hurts tier, and he's kind of bleeding over into the Lamar tier in terms of like an NFL draft prospect. But if he can improve the the decision making and the accuracy, I think he easily jumps into the top end of the first round and maybe even first overall. So, but what do you think, Eric?
I mean, if we're talking ceiling with Anthony Richardson, it's 101 in startup drafts. That's the ceiling. We saw it against Utah. Utah is a good football team. A lot of people are going to shit on Utah for losing to Florida, but guess what? They had 2 times were inside the 5, first and goal, and they came up with 0 points both times and lost to a very different Florida than we're used to in the last couple of years. But this is a big, strong, powerful, fast quarterback, right? Ceiling is as high as it gets. There are definitely going to be some people out there screaming, "Oh, he's won for 2023." Game. That's a little fast for me. I want to see more. I want to see more improvement. Not even improvement, just like performance. I want to see him go. I want to see him go to play Kentucky's coming into town this week. Will Levis is coming. Can he outplay Will Levis? Can he challenge Georgia? That's what I want to see. But the ceiling is it gets.
Yeah. So what prospects are you looking forward to from that you saw in that Florida Utah game? I know this was a big game for you. You really wanted to talk about this game. So what's kind of your idea of who you want to see, or who you want to see more of?
The number one reason I was looking forward to this game was Anthony Richardson by far. I thought that he had a fantastic game. Side of Richardson, Montreal Johnson I was a big fan of Montreal Johnson, and I was a little see like a split backfield. Montreal Johnson, he had 12 for 75 with a touchdown. He did have a fumble, but like he showed that he's talented, right? He elevated University of Louisiana Lafayette, and he, with Bill Napier came up to Florida, and he looked good. But Trevor Etienne he flashed like, name value obviously is a thing. Trevor Etienne looked pretty darn good to me. The only player really that I was semi-excited about for Utah was Brent Kuth, tight end, that second tight end, right? Everyone knows Dalton Kincaid if you're in the Devy world. But Brent Kuth was he had over 100 yards, he was just making play after play.
Yeah, I agree with those. I think it was Florida was an interesting situation. They definitely had the split black backfield, and I think it was impressive. Travis, are there any prospects that we didn't mention that you were kind of interested in the Florida Utah sphere? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, I was probably not ones that you didn't mention. I think I was intrigued just to see who was going to emerge as the prominent wide receiver one for Florida. And early returns looks like it's Xavier Henderson. Looks like he could be the volume play. No one was super explosive necessarily, and didn't have a lot of volume in the passing game necessarily from the Florida wide receivers. But yeah, he is definitely intriguing. He, of course, his brother has already made it to the league as a cornerback, CJ Henderson. Not a bunch of success there, but just an interesting story. He was a high pedigree guy that we all had on our radar. I think a lot of us long-term Devy nerds wanted, Justin Shorter to be a thing, but probably not going to be at this point. But yeah, I think, Devy tight ends are really hard to come by, but Utah looks like they have a couple of them. And so obviously I think it's not Kincaid, but Kuth. I always mess up. I've heard pronounced like announcers say Kuthi. Like I've heard all sorts of stuff like over the last 5 years that he's been in college, but he's been a big deal even since he was a sophomore. So I think he does get drafted. I just don't think he gets very early capital. But yeah, I mean, it's really just the Anthony Richardson show that I was really excited about. And, maybe next year ETN really flashes and sees more work, but just odd to me how Florida, even with multiple coaching staffs, uses the running backs. Maybe it's just because it's just where we are right now. But Niquan Wright had like 10 touches. ETN had like 7 touches, and then Montreal Johnson had like 15 touches. Like they still spread it around like crazy. So I will be interested just to see where those touches go, and if anyone really takes over as a feature back, or if we're just going to be in for another ugly kind of committee down the stretch.
Yeah. So moving on to Ohio State and Notre Dame. So I didn't think Ohio State looked great offensively. It looked like they started kind of slow, and then they picked it up in the second half. Eric, do you think, is there anything to read into there? Is there any actual like news, or is it just like, is Notre Dame better than we thought they were going to be in terms of like, that they're replacing a lot of talent? Like, what do you kind of think about that?
My takeaway was Emeka Egbuka, right? JSN, Jackson Jigba. For most people, he's a wide receiver 1, if not wide receiver 2, in Devy. He went down very early with an injury, and it was Emeka Egbuka, not Marvin Harrison Jr., to be the primary target for CJ Stroud. I think that you look at the Ohio State performance and think, oh, let me downgrade CJ Stroud. Let me downgrade the Ohio State offense. That's a mistake, because Notre Dame is a good football team, 5th team in the country. Whether or not they earn that or not, they're still a very good football team. And they played a too high safety look almost the entire game. And they said, we're going to slow the tempo down. We're going to run the ball. We're going to, try and bow constrict this, and hopefully, have a turnover or two. and, steal a win. So I thought CJ Stroud was impressive. QBR of 89.5, still had a 6.6 average per attempt. Didn't have an interception. He just took what was there, right? He had his best weapon was gone, and he just took what was there. He got the win, week 1 against a good football team. I personally was very impressed by CJ Stroud's performance. And for those that had invested in Emeka Buka as the huge 5-star, talent as a freshman a year ago, I think that we were rewarded because we saw what he can be.
Yeah, what do you think, Travis? You on the same page there? Or?
I think, Buka and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba, they were going to be the top 3. Fleming obviously wasn't in, but he's probably going to be the fourth option that rotates in and out some with Ibuka and Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba, focal point of the offense when healthy all season long. It was good to see them utilize Ibuka's explosiveness, just finding ways to get him the ball when there weren't healthier options around him. It was really intriguing just to see them go to a walk-on and kind of a big moment there with Xavier Johnson. Really cool to see him actually get an opportunity in such a crowded wide receiver room. But yeah, I'm really still high on the entire trio of Harrison Jr., Ibuka and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Fleming, I don't know. I'd love to see him actually do something at this point, but it's going to be really hard for him to reach his one-time super high expectations and potential. But yeah, we knew going in that it was going to be a tough ask to ask Notre Dame to keep up with Ohio State. So rather than trying to do so, they just slowed the game down from the get-go. They were milking the clock from the very first drive. Like they averaged like almost 34 full seconds per play, which is taking up almost the entire clock just about every single time, just to even get the playoff. Like it was crazy. So they were the second slowest offense in the entire country this week. And so they were just basically, look, let's just try to keep it close. Maybe, there's a couple mistakes that are made and we're just in this at the very end. And that really worked for like 3+ quarters of the game. And so bravo to Mark Freeman for just identifying the best approach to slow down this high flying offense. And so, yeah, I'm still very high, very bullish on the Ohio State offense as a whole. Trevion Henderson, even Lyon Williams actually impressed too. So really, really, I'm not worried about them. They're going to crush everyone else. Notre Dame just had good enough line play to stick it to them and stop them enough. Like guys like Foskey, and they really, that they had enough up front to kind of challenge and at least make CJ Stroud kind of think for a moment. And then really on the offensive side of the ball, they just had a really smart game plan there too with Notre Dame. That is, Buckner, his average depth of target this week was over 11 yards downfield. Like I know that first play was kind of like a dink and dunk option that just went for a longer yardage, but like when they were taking shots, they were going for a very efficient plays. Like he only had like 16 or 18 pass attempts on the entire game, Tyler Buckner, that is. But they're trying to go for the quick strike on a slow pace, and even prioritizing the outside run when they could to take the higher expected outcome from even the rushing game. So they're playing low volume, high efficiency strikes to get 1 or 2 scores, and they got 1, and that worked. But against Ohio State, it's just really going to be tough at any point to even stay in the game. And I don't think that anyone else on the entire schedule even stays within 11 points all season long for Ohio State.
Yeah. I think this game was, like you guys said, it was Notre Dame slowing the game down, right? I think with Ohio State, their best bet to be beat is Michigan. But Michigan, I haven't seen enough from the quarterback play from Michigan, at least to see that they're going to beat Ohio State. I agree with you guys about the quarterback play, the wide receiver play. I think everything's going to be just as. I think this was probably the lowest scoring game for them of the season, and I think you're going to expect good things from the offense for the rest of the year. But let's go on to North Carolina and Appalachian State. So this was probably the most exciting game of the season. or at least week one, and we'll see if that holds true for the rest of the year. Back and forth affair. North Carolina, great offensive performance, terrible defensive performance. It's looking, honestly, it seems like my pick on Drake May, being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL or in the ACC, excuse me. But the team being like 7-5, 8-4, it looks like that's going to probably be a pretty good prediction. Eric, what did you take away from the game itself?
Real quick, Drake May is very good at football. UNC is very bad at defense. It's about that simple. Like, this was the best game of week one, in my opinion, by far. It was so fun, but App State shouldn't be nearly, beating UNC, with the talent they've recruited. It's better when you get that type of quarterback play.
Yeah. Travis, did you have any other thoughts on that other than kind of what we're saying, or?
I mean, it has to be the only time in the history of the game that a team scores 40 points in the final quarter and then loses. Like, there's no way that's ever happened before. So that's incredibly sad for Appalachian State. But man, what a freaking game! Like, that was incredible. I had to rewatch it and just like how did this even happen? Like, I mean, I just like with the amount of time that they just scored, it was back and forth. You think it's over, and then Appalachian State scores in like 10 seconds, and it's just, how in the world is this happening? So probably my favorite game thus far. Drake May against in week one anyway. He looked a little bit slow out of the gate, in terms of his processing, but still found great success. He did not look slow at all. He looked comfortable and amazing, just up and down the field, every single drive. It just looked really comfortable. So he's going to put up some absolutely bonkers numbers, and he's going to have to, given how horrible the North Carolina defense has been. I am intrigued, though, just to see where they go with the running back split moving forward, because like if you look at the snaps and usage through 2 weeks, they have 4 running backs on their team that all have at least 33 snaps. But they have 0 running backs with more than 41 snaps. So they have 4 guys across the 2 weeks in between 33 and 41 snaps. And I don't know where they're going to go. I think my bet long term would be George Pettaway. He's the most explosive. He's got the highest pedigree. Amari Hampton had the great week one, whatever. But I think George Pettaway is the guy that's going to run away with that job. And eventually it looks similar to that Javonte Williams and Michael Carter stack from just a couple years ago.
Yeah, and these are all young guys too. These aren't like old running backs. Like, these are all young freshmen or
true freshmen. Right?
Yeah. So, I think this is going to be a great running back room, and I think you could see all 3 of these guys drafted. Like, I don't think that's like a stretch to say that all 3 could get drafted in the NFL. But Eric, do you have anything else about North Carolina that you want to talk about?
I just hope you're right, Travis, about Pettaway being the guy. Pettaway actually went to high school about 9 miles from where I live. So I'm quite the George Pettaway homer. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And it was cool just to see also, one last thing is he didn't get a bunch of targets, but I was intrigued to see who would, outsnap everybody and be the kind of every down wide receiver when Josh Downs, was out. And that was kind of a surprise for those that play college football DFS. But Gavin Blackwell was the guy who was like the every single down wide receiver. So he actually, through 2 weeks, is by far the team leader in snaps. And so we'll see if that translates to more targets, more opportunity. Because I was a fan of him even coming out. So he was, top 250-ish overall recruit coming into the process. But he looks like the team really trusts him already too. So if there's going to be a second option outside of Nesbitt, of course, at tight end, and Paysauer this week looked like he was an okay option, but Blackwell might be the long-term kind of wide receiver 2 opposite of Downs.
Yeah. So let's go on to Florida State LSU. This was a very interesting game as well. Went down to the absolute wire. I think it kind of had the questionable decision with the refs in terms of the last second of the game there. But for me, Florida State LSU, I think the story for many people is Florida State back, or is LSU that bad? I will go to you, Travis, first because I'm a huge LSU homer, so I will let you go first before I give my opinion.
So I'm sorry. What was the question exactly?
For Florida State LSU,
Yeah.
what did you take away from it? Is Florida State back, or is LSU going to be just a bad team?
I think it's a little bit of neither. It was really disappointing that Mason Smith is going to be out, I guess, for the entire season now. He was an absolute monster in terms of recruiting, and even last year as a true freshman, he was just really dominant in some times and places for LSU. So that's interior defensive lineman Mason Smith going to be missing time. That was huge, and for him to go down when he did, I think that definitely negatively affected the game for LSU. But Jaden Daniels, when he was announced the starter, that wasn't a surprise to me. They have clear offensive line issues for LSU, and so they're going to go with the quarterback that's going to mask those issues the best. And Daniels just kind of, his first read's not there, and he kind of took off running, and that was the game plan. It seemed like that was going to be the only way they were going to find success, because Florida State, their front was incredible. Like Jared Verse, I believe, had 9 pressures or something like that on the game, which was incredible. Of course, the biggest transfer acquisition for Florida State this week, this offseason for them. So to see Florida State's defensive front be as dominant as they were, not super surprising given the LSU's offensive line was shaky and then starting a couple of young guys, especially on the left side. But man, Florida State, they always had the potential. They always had some talent. It was just good to see that actually mean something. And when Jordan Travis was healthy last year, Florida State was actually already good. They just didn't have him in all their games. And Jordan Travis actually low key had 85th percentile pass efficiency profile last season, on top of being a really solid runner. And that showed up again. Like, he was clearly the superior passer to Jaden Daniels. And I think, he's back. Florida State might not be all the way back, but Jordan Travis, he's legit. So to see him pair that mobility with pass efficiency against an LSU front that has some dudes on it was a lot of fun. And they're clearly they're a lot deeper at wide receiver too. So they're not all the way back. I think they're going to struggle. They're going to find creative ways to lose because that's who they've been. But it was cool to see Jordan Travis be as good as he was, and cool to see LSU with a mobile quarterback, honestly, just because that's not really how they go. But I really would have loved to see the wide receiver play be a ton better for LSU. But I'm not, again, just like Ohio State, they have the talent, they have the skill. I think there's going to be more opportunity down the stretch to get that right.
I think part of the reason that the wide receiver room struggled this past week was the Jaden Daniels, he had to run the ball a lot. The first read broke down, and he had to get out of the pocket, or he was getting sacked. Eric, what do you think? Are you on the same page here with us?
Yeah. My big thought is that these are two teams that have brand name recognition but are not good at actual football. Florida State might be turning the corner, and I think LSU will turn the corner with Brian Kelly. I am a big fan of Bradley, but the offensive line is garbage. It really is. And Jaden Daniels, you said it well. If the first read wasn't there, well, guess what? He's got Keishon Butte, who's arguably the best wide receiver in the country. And also Malik Neighbors, although a horrible punt returner apparently, because he moved 2 punts and had 2 fumbles there. But actually, very promising wide receiver group for the 2024 NFL. Looked very good in Butte's absence last year, and was basically the talk of fall camp for LSU. They got 2 good players. LSU is always talented. That we always know that. They won a championship. Just a few years in a row. The issue is it's like a culture thing. I don't know. They're almost like the Dallas Cowboys, but almost more successful. They always have the talent, but it seems they typically underperform. I'm more interested in these players than I am the team. But I'm with you, Trey. I think that Jordan Travis was very exciting. showed some real ability with his arm. So, you know,
Yeah. So I'll say one thing about LSU though. It's hard to judge the talent, especially like at running back and quarterback, because of how bad the offensive line was. So, a couple players I'm interested in for just the running back room at LSU have always been, John Emery and Armani Goodwin. I think until the offensive line improves, though, you're not going to see big numbers from either of them. And just want to say, I want to say that LSU is probably going to be a 6 to 7 win football team this year. I don't see any reason they would be any higher than that. Just because of how difficult the schedule is, playing all the other teams in the SEC West. But, Florida State, they could be a 9-win team this year, I think. But do you guys have anything else? Eric, do you have anything else about this game? Or
No, that's it.
Okay. All right. So Clemson and Georgia Tech. So for me, the big story here was DJU's struggles. Georgia Tech's not like a great football team. And despite what the final score said, DJU just really didn't put very many good drives together. He had a couple, but I think he showed the same issues that a lot of people had as issues last year. Travis, do you have anything about DJU, or are you completely out on them? Or
I think we're always about the new shiny thing, and to me, he actually looked markedly better than he did last year overall. His decision making was clean. Took a second to get things going, but he made some really good passes. About the middle point of the game and late in the game, he made some really good passes to get them in position to win. He's going to have to do a whole lot more and really find that rhythm. But there's a lot of pressure on him right now, having Cade Klubnik and 5-star behind him. Everybody just being constantly addicted to trashing this guy. And that's just where we are as a culture. People love to just pile on. But I think he still has every bit of the talent that we saw coming into the process, being a top 2-3 overall kind of kid in this entire class, and his entire recruiting class, that is. And he's got the size, the arm strength. Needs to learn how to take it off a little bit. But man, it's so funny. Like the smaller sample that we saw in, his true freshman year, he was like a 93rd, 94th percentile efficient kind of passer. And then he dropped all the way to like the 9th percentile. It's like the widest span in my entire database year over year of anybody. And that happens when you open up week 1 last year against Georgia and do absolutely nothing because your offensive line caves against perhaps the best defense of all time. And he just never recovered. We need to see that here soon. Otherwise, whether it makes sense to do so or not, fans are going to basically try to shove him out the door and continue to get on the Klubnik hype train. But that's okay. I mean, like, that's just the nature of it. Maybe he'll get a fair shot somewhere else. But I think he's going to be just fine. If Clemson wanted to roll with him all season long, they'd probably lose at most one game and be in the playoff mix.
Yeah, I mean, I have a slight disagreement. I do think the offense looked just a slight bit. I think they did look a little bit better, especially with Klubnik. The issue, though, is that was in the garbage time of the game, right? That's like the very last drive of the game. So it's really not a great sample.
They clearly had it. There was basically, hey, look, these are your scripted one reads. We're going to give you an ISO kind of like, hey, look, we're going to roll you out. You have one read to make, the high or low. That's it. And that worked. Klubnik was good. I just wish they would do that kind of thing more creatively some with DJ, because he has the mobility and speed to make that kind of play as well. But yeah, that would be fun just to see them give him that kind of opportunity too. But we'll see. I think the biggest issue is just going to be the wide receiver play. Antonio Williams, true freshman, is already the best wide receiver on the team. So that's probably a problem. Like, they have all these big trees that are just slow and can't separate. Apparently can't catch either. So they're going to have to really figure out the wide receiver position fast. And the correct answer is give about half your receiving targets to Antonio Williams, like, now.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything else about the Clemson? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, I just got to say thank you, Travis. I did realize that I was not alone for the defender of DJ Uiagalelei. I agree. I think that the biggest issue is Dabo Swinney. And, Dabo Sweeney hired within the offense coordinator. He refuses to go outside the pro. Like, offense is so rudimentary. Their offensive line is garbage. Their receiving weapons are garbage. You're right. This true freshman is by far the best candidate, which doesn't make sense for a team with Clemson's previous success. Clay Cupnick, why can't you said it right, Travis? Why can't we see DJU, with these rollout plays? Why can't we see that offense with DJU? That's what I want to see. Get them, out of that, away from the bad offensive line.
Just zero creativity. Just frustrating.
Yeah.
He refuses to hire with outside, the program. And I think that's going to be the downfall. They're going to be very good. This defense is elite, super elite. Yeah. They're going to win 10 games. They might win 11. But their ceiling is, I think, being stomped by Dabo. I think they need to find a way to get a real, offensive scheme. I believe in DJU. At this point, I think, a transfer is probably the best way for DJU to prove his talents, because confidence is scarred.
Yeah, so let's jump into Ole Miss and Troy. Eric, this was your pick that you really wanted to talk about, so I'll let you have the floor and let you, kind of say what you want. Go ahead.
I mean, the big takeaway for me is that Zach Evans is a superstar. Zach Evans, we saw like little hits last year, but really, I think Zach Evans can contend for being, RB, certainly RB2, if not RB1. My big takeaway from this is a lot of people are super excited about Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart against Troy looked like, what did we have? We had 5-7 yards per attempt. Decent QBR, but because he has decent use of his legs. But like, this against Troy, they should run up the score the way he did against Oregon, which by the way, Oregon is supposed to be a good football team, but the way Alabama did, the way most of these good quality teams did against Week 0. So my takeaway is, if they improve drastically in the passing game, Ole Miss is not a double-digit win team. In 2022, they were last year.
Yeah, it was always questionable, I think, just to invest heavily into Jackson Dart, and it looks like Ole Miss might not even be doing that. So Altmaier is going to get more run in the coming weeks, or coming week rather, and we'll see who they actually land with. But there was a lot of hype surrounding Jackson Dart, because even in recruiting circles, he was kind of a 3-star kid, but quickly rose through the ranks thanks to some 7-on-7 success and final season success for Dart. And then when he actually came in place of Slovis, his first game rather, was it looked pretty good, because he had to throw the ball almost 50 times, added some value with his legs, had almost 400 passing yards, and then he really didn't actually have a good game the rest of the entire season, unless you count the performance against BYU as like an okay one, but they still lost. And so really, Jackson Dart did nothing outside of his one performance last year. So the potential is still there, but rough start for Dart.
Yeah, the one person I want to mention is Michael Trigg, right? We're looking for the next big thing at tight end in Debbie. Michael Trigg at least was a pretty decent option for that, as a candidate for that. Other than the top tier guys, but he had an over 20% target percentage, and that's pretty good for a tight end, right? So he's looking like he could be one of the top options for them, and that's interesting going forward in Debbie and CTC.
Absolutely. And then not to mention, the one guy who will probably follow up Evans as the lead option there for Ole Miss in the run game, after Evans is probably a top 50 overall pick next spring, Quinshon Judkins, who was not a super high pedigree guy, but the team liked and committed to, and offered him super early. Judkins chose Ole Miss, and he paid off. He had, I think, 15, 16 touches for Ole Miss in week 1 as the clear running back 2 for the team. So he'll be somebody I'm really interested in watching moving forward too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Love Judkins.
Yeah. All right. So week 2, Eric, do you want to talk about why you're interested in the 2 teams up there?
Yeah, I mean, Florida, Kentucky is really easy. It's Anthony Richardson and it's Levis. These are 2 Bs that could be first-round draft picks in the 2023. Personally, I want to say Kentucky's going to get the better of Florida going down to the swamp. Florida, a lot of people are probably high on their win against Utah. My only reservation for Kentucky is their offensive line looks terrible. I think they found some players to kind of, be weapons for love, but I am definitely worried about that offensive line. That's a quarterback battle for me, right? It's Richardson, it's Levis. Those are the people I'm interested in. Bama, Texas. I mean, Bama, like, come on, we know the names. Texas. I'm wondering, is Quinn Ewers going to have the DJU experience of 2021, right? Going against a amazing defense. Are we going to see, Quinn get broken the way DJU got broken against Georgia last year? I think Bama wins by at least 2 touchdowns. I think it's probably more likely they win by 3. The question is can Bijan actually do something against that defense? Because I mean, Bijan's amazing. Don't get me wrong, but you said it earlier, Travis. Great Jorgens was last year, one of the all-time best. Bama, honestly, I think this year is gonna compare pretty well against them. As a defensive unit. Can Quinn Ewers with those weapons, right? Sanders looks really tight end. We know, Worthy's is a great player. Can they make plays? That's what I'm interested in. Against such a level competition, can they make some plays? I don't expect them, honestly, be even competitive, but I'm just hoping to see some production.
Yeah, I think it'll be a miracle for them to keep it within 3 scores. I know the line's right around 20 points right now, but if they keep it to 3 touchdowns, that's a miracle in my mind. Because there's just no way. Alabama has the advantage at literally every position, and in most places, it's not even remotely close. Bryce Young, it was like a freaking preseason game. Threw 5 touchdowns, ran in another touchdown in 32 minutes of total gameplay last week and against Utah State. That's broken. That's not even trying on rookie mode of a video game. That's just absolutely nuts. And so, yeah, good luck, Quinn Ewers. Good luck, Xavier Worthy. Hope you don't get broken in half. Bijan, just find a way to have your team cramp up or something early so you don't get injured, man. Save your draft capital. It's gonna be really ugly. It's gonna be 30 points plus wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And then Florida's going to kill Kentucky because Kentucky couldn't protect Will Levis against Miami of Ohio last week, man. That's a joke. Miami of Ohio lost so many players, and they bring in these no-star kids, and they rush successfully time and time again against Kentucky, against the very much not a first-round pick, Will Levis. Will Levis, I mean, he's got some tools. That's cool. He eats some weird stuff. That's funny. But last year he was a 67th percentile and pass efficiency kind of profile guy, which basically says, hey guys, what's up? I'm undraftable. And so unless he really improves with lesser weapons this year, Will Levis is not going to be a first round pick, and he's going to get exposed real hard against a team like Florida, let alone some better defenses later in the year too. So I'm not worried about Florida covering, and I'm not worried about Alabama covering. There's the talent level across the board, and at the peak spots and most important spots like quarterback, not coached for Florida, Kentucky, and Ewers has potential to get there, but he's not there yet. Just too early.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add about either of those. I think both those are spot on. So for me, USC, Stanford, and Baylor first BYU, continuing with the quarterback battle here, right? So for USC, how does Caleb Williams look against better competition with Lincoln Riley's offense? I think Lincoln Riley and USC are going to walk all over Stanford. I don't think the defense, though, is going to look nearly as good as it did last week. So I think it could be a shootout, if anything. Baylor BYU, I just want to see Jaron Hall. I want to see what he looks like against better competition. And Baylor's a really good football team, but I don't expect BYU to win this game at all. What do you guys think, Travis?
It would be real tough for BYU to beat Baylor, and that's just because they had immense success last week. They averaged like 8.5 yards per carry. That's cool. That's not going to happen this week, man. Baylor last year was like top 10 in the nation in stopping rush efficiency, and so that's going to be a really tough matchup. It's going to be all on the shoulders of Jaron Hall, and so I don't know because their wide receiver health is again in question going into this week. So Baylor's going to find a way. They're going to win, and it might not be very close. And they're probably going to get more on track in the ground game too. USC, man, Caleb Williams had like the best true freshman season of all time last year. Like a 95th percentile pass efficiency and 450 plus yards on the ground in like 8 starts ish. Like, I mean, that's insane what he was doing last year. And so goes over same offensive system, has even better wide receivers with Mario Williams still there, Jordan Addison still there, and then like their backups to the backups of the backups at USC are still where they're super super deep. They had took in a bunch of transfers, and then they their wide receiver 5, 6, 7 still 4-star kid. Like even Kyron Ware Hudson, like he's like I'm still high on him. Like it's just they're deep on offense. Defense is going to have some questions, but they're going to take care of business.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything about USC, Stanford, Baylor, BYU?
My point is more about USC, not to say anything against the offensive weapons, because you're right, Robert and Travis, they're excellent. Like we're talking first round draft capital in the NFL draft type of players. My real thing has to do with their ability to play in the college football playoff. Their defense is not good. Their defense is really bad. They had 3, I believe it was 3 pick sixes last week. And Rice actually moved the ball. In their first 4 drives, I believe they had 2 60-plus yard drives against them. Rice shouldn't be doing that against, a college football playoff team. I think that USC, will be good. And in 2 years, they're probably going to be in the college football playoffs. But I will bet good money that their defense is going to cost them at least 2 games this year. And people are going to be pretty disappointed.
Yeah, I think I even took the under. I think it was like 9.5 or something for USC. And I took the under just because I thought they're going to find a way to ruin it. It's not going to be Caleb Williams' fault. It's not going to be anybody on the offense's fault. It's going to be that defense when they get into the really tough parts of their schedule, and they're just going to find a way to ruin it. So it's probably not going to be this week, but yeah, it might be closer than we think, just because of the defensive woes there that are definitely coming. Stanford, they looked better than they probably should have last week, because really that the long run that EJ Smith had, I think it was 80 plus yards. That really skewed their stats a little bit in terms of averages, but they can do some more on the ground, I think, this week against USC. And so, yeah, that will be fun to watch because, AJ Smith is, of course, Emmitt Smith's son. So I hope he finds a way to produce some this year for Stanford.
Yeah. So moving on to the NFL. So there's the 2 games that, each me and Eric are both looking to is Chiefs Cardinals and Commanders versus Jaguars. So I just want to see which Patrick Mahomes looks like against without his Tyreek Hill. And see, what does that offense look like without Tyreek Hill? So, Eric, what about you?
I mean, if we're talking that game, I believe Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the world. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm more interested in the Cardinals side. What is Hollywood Brown going to look like in this offense? What are they going to look without DeAndre Hopkins? I think we're looking at a total shootout in this one. Yes, Tyler Hill is an enormous loss, but I think Mahomes is good enough, and I think Andrew Reid's good enough that they can make up.
What about the Commanders and the Jags?
I mean, this is all about Trevor Lawrence for me. I honestly, sure, yeah, I'm kind of interested about Jahan Dotson, but mainly interest in Jahan Dotson is by Carson Wentz. I don't think Carson Wentz is a great, NFL quarterback. I actually like him a lot more in fantasy than I do in the NFL. But I'm really interested to see what Trevor Lawrence can do without Urban Meyer directing the team. I think that this is a great opportunity. They invested a lot of money. They put some money into the line. They brought in, obviously, everyone wants to scoff at the Christian Kirk contract they gave. I'm really curious to see if Trevor Lawrence can show the talent that we all, expected from this player.
Yeah.
I'm expecting Trevor Lawrence to find success this year. Last year was just an absolute mess for the Jaguars. So I hope that Trevor Lawrence just absolutely stomps the Commanders. And I hope part of it also comes because Carson Wentz reveals who he's been all along, which is a very mediocre quarterback that makes poor decisions when things really count. So much so that it frustrates them to the point that they bench him and put in the best quarterback on the team, which is Sam Howell. That would be absolutely hilarious to see that in week one. It's not going to be the case, but man, I'd love to see it because I really love Sam Howell. I think, what he was asked to do in his final season for North Carolina, which was to put the entire team, the weight of all 100 players on his back and carry them every single week, was just disrespectful. And for teams to, analysts to watch, just his final season and think they have everything figured out with Howell is just laughable. So, the potential is still there for him to be an NFL starter, despite the capital that we saw him get this year. Commanders are going to get trashed. Jaguars, even though they were really bad at making wide receiver signing choices with Christian Kirk, Lawrence is going to smash him. So that's fun. I hope that pans out because Lawrence's passing profile was absurd. He was the perfect quarterback prospect coming out. So that would be a lot of fun to see. And then, the shootout, great choice of game, man. I'm excited to see where the targets go for the Chiefs in Tyreek Hill's absence. Probably not Mecole Hardman still because it's Mecole Hardman, and he'll find a way to disappoint us time and time again. That's what he does. But Travis Kelce's still going to absolutely eat. And of course, according to Twitter, Isaiah Pacheco is going to have 17 touchdowns. But that's just going to be a lot of fun to see how those games play out.
Yeah, the Chiefs depth chart just in general is going to be, completely turned aside by week one. So,
yes.
But yeah, do you guys have anything else? Eric, do you have anything else to talk about today? Or
I mean, just that I'm so excited that NFL football is here. I mean, week one is in the books for the college level, and that's really what I'm more interested in. But hey, NFL is going to happen in less than 2 hours. I'm so excited. Labor Day is football time. Can we get a Hank Williams Jr. song going right now? I'm pumped.
Yeah, well, we thank Travis for coming on. We really appreciate you joining us, and please give him a follow on Twitter. Check out his content, and Travis, if you want to kind of close us out here a little bit with your content, what you want, where people can find you and stuff like that.
So you can find me again on Twitter at @FF_TravisM. You can find my written fantasy work at rotoviz.com. You can find my college football stat nerdiness at solidverbal.com. And then check out the College to Kenton podcast. I do that with Stefan Leco, covering all things college football to the NFL. Really talking about the players from a player focus, their journey from recruit all the way to Hall of Fame discussion. So it's a good time. But thanks again for having me on, guys. It's good talking ball. But enjoy the football season.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.